So, first of all, thank you for tuning in, guys. And this video today, I'm going to be essentially rounding up the last two competitions that I've obviously competed in over the last 2 or 3 weeks now, which, if you've of course been following me along on Instagram, those being the PCA Manchester, which was the first show, and then the PCA, so the Physical Culture Association, so the Manchester, and then the Birmingham qualifiers. The last one being, so it's Monday today, not last weekend, the weekend before. That was the final show, which was the show in Birmingham, which this video is going to be kind of a roundup summary of how I feel those shows went, how I feel about my look, how I feel about my placing, which is of course going to be relevant, and then also kind of like a summary of how I feel this entire contest prep phase essentially has gone, and what are the key takeaways, be it positive, be it negative, that I've taken away from this experience so far, and to hopefully give you guys a little bit of insight into what's next for me in terms of my plans, in terms of my competitive plans, in terms of what I'm doing now. Obviously the shows are over now, so where's my head at, and what direction am I going from here? So if you guys caught the last video on my YouTube channel, I kind of went into a little bit of detail around my approach to peak week in regards to nutrition, in regards to supplementation, in regards to training, how I felt during that week, all of that kind of jazz. And that was in a little bit more detail than I'll go into this week, simply because the main premise of this video is to just give you a general update of where I'm at right now. I know I've been a little bit slow on the YouTube updates, on the Instagram updates, purely because deep in those kind of dark stages of prep, energy levels, as you can imagine, kind of motivation levels to keep on top of this were diminishing to some degree. So now I want to be a lot more consistent in catching up, or at least catching my YouTube channel up. I know it doesn't get a huge amount of views whatsoever, but I want it all there. So that's my aim with these quick kind of update videos. So that brings me back to Manchester. How did I feel Manchester went? Well, I'm gonna essentially put up some stage pictures whilst I'm talking through this. I'm gonna put up my morning pictures, so we'll more than likely start with how I felt the morning of the show. So I woke up at around 205.6 pounds, I think it was, on the morning of the Manchester show, which was the first show. And honestly, if you guys have checked out the peak week video, I went to bed on the Saturday night, so the show was on Sunday. I went to bed on the Saturday night feeling pretty bloated. So if you remember, I'd pushed calories and I'd ate up to quite a significant degree, and Saturday night I did feel relatively bloated. So it was a case of, okay, have I overshot this in terms of what I can actually tolerate food wise and kind of calorie wise? But with that being said, I woke up Sunday morning and my stomach was down, my midsection was down. I had a good bowel movement in the morning, which in my opinion is going to be vital to making sure you've got good midsection control on stage. And those pictures I took the morning of the Manchester show, which you may or may not have seen on screen already, or they might be on screen now, but those are my favorite ever progress pictures that I've ever taken. I was very, very happy with the combination of the condition that I brought, of the fullness that I'd obviously attained as a result of pushing food relatively hard since the Thursday. And just overall, I woke up feeling so positive, so kind of my head was in a good place in terms of my mindset going into the show. And cruising into that morning, really, it was a case of just managing that look. I only had, let's say I woke up at 6 or 7 a.m, show was at 12, and I, of course, being in the junior class, we were first up. So I only had one meal during that morning, and I didn't really want to change any of the variables to a certain extent. So it was a case of just kind of ticking over my hunger as opposed to eating for any more, to achieve any more of a particular look. So I had I think 3 rice cakes, 100 grams of turkey, and about 10 grams of dark chocolate, which I think amounted to maybe 15 grams of carbs, 5 grams of fats, and around 20 to 25 grams of protein. And that led me up into the show. I made sure that was kind of digested, and I'd finished that meal at least 3 hours before I knew I was on stage. And the result was probably the best, well, not probably, definitely the best I've ever looked, and definitely the best I'd ever felt during the prep in terms of fullness. I was going through the posing rounds on stage. They worked us pretty hard, in my opinion. Well, in my opinion, this is my first experience, so I take that back, but it was hard because maybe it was just because I was unprepared in the sense that I was doing 1 round of posing, whereas we were posing back to back 3-4 rounds, and I was gassed as hell. But the pump was pretty insane. I don't think I've actually got a pump like that just from posing before, and feeling super full, just feeling better the more I posed on stage, which is always going to be kind of the scenario you want to be in, I suppose. And when you know you're feeling good, I think that definitely probably translated to the way I looked and the way I was able to present myself on stage, which again is going to be another positive thing. So yeah, all in all, very, very happy with the look I brought to the stage, and you would have seen some of the stage pictures kind of sliding across, obviously, as I've been speaking. But no, very happy with that look on the Manchester stage. Obviously, I managed to place second, and kind of in terms of the placing, I was very happy with that. Very happy. My end goal was always going to be to try and nail my conditioning, to nail my presentation, and then in regards to muscularity and potentially being outsized, I always knew that was going to be, if it came down to kind of top 3 and I was in that top 3, I knew it was going to come down to muscularity, which it did. And the guy who took first place, Matthew Ince, coached by Jordan Peters, which I had no idea, looked absolutely incredible, good shape, great muscularity, outsized me to a relatively significant degree on most body parts, most poses. I'm confident that I more than likely beat him on condition and beat the lineup on condition, especially from the rear, which that was my goal. So second place, I was very happy, very, very happy indeed. And it was kind of only positive things to take away from that show, and pleasure to have been on stage next to some good talent, because at the end of the day, that is exactly the situation that I wanted to put myself in, for me to be able to see essentially how I stacked up against some other kind of top caliber up and coming juniors from the UK. And then that obviously leads us up to Sunday night, which then puts me 7 days out of the next competition, being the PCA Birmingham. So of course, in bodybuilding tradition, I ate up and I had a good solid meal, and maybe a few extra treats and desserts on top on the Sunday evening. And then Monday morning it was straight back to the diet that I was on 7 days out of the Manchester show. And I actually did cut food back slightly as well. So to give you kind of some justification as to why that was, my approach going into the Birmingham show, or my aim at least, was to dial it in condition wise a little bit more. So in my opinion, I wasn't in true condition for the Manchester show, which I probably commented on that before, that I would have liked longer for sure, without a doubt. I still held body fat in significant places, a significant pinch of body fat in a lot of places, despite being in relatively good condition for a junior. I hold quite high standards for myself in terms of what I wanted to bring to the stage. So my approach was to hit the ground running pretty damn hard, and to spend Monday all the way up until Friday chasing essentially for more condition, which I knew was always going to be a risk, because any pushing too hard potentially can of course lead to muscle loss, can of course lead to not being able to kind of get out of that hole that we've dug ourselves into in time to look our best for the show. But with that being said, this contest prep for me is entirely an experimentation process. Obviously, me coaching myself, I want to take away as much information and as much data, as much insight, and as much kind of applicable feedback from this competition diet, so that I can then apply that in the future to not only myself but to clients. So it was something that I was willing to do because I was more worried about what I can take away from the contest prep as opposed to kind of like improving my placing. Like if I dropped a placing because I'm too flat, it's not something I was kind of too concerned about at this stage, because there was kind of, I can see the bigger picture, if that makes any sense to you guys. So Monday to Friday, I think I cut carbohydrates maybe by maybe only by 25 grams per day, kind of evenly spread throughout the 4 meals that I consume on a daily basis. And I also increased some of the supplementation I was using to aid in fat loss, which of course you guys can check out specifics on my training log. So all kind of variables were pointing towards being in more of an energy deficit, which is of course the aim being to result in more fat loss. So Monday to Friday I was pushing things pretty hard. I did cardio 60 minutes Monday to Wednesday, which is the most I've ever done. Training, I actually brought training intensity up slightly again, simply because the extra bolus of calories on the Sunday, I had a lot more energy. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday I trained, and then in similar fashion to the peak week for Manchester, I kind of pulled back on the cardio as of the Wednesday, pulled back on training intensity, and then just resorted to more of kind of pump sessions from the Thursday, leading up into the show. In terms of when did I carb up, when did I start feeding up for the show? So if you remember, on the Manchester peak week, I started on the Thursday, and it was pretty aggressive from the Thursday, and then a slow kind of taper down in food and in carbohydrates in general the closer I got to the show. Whereas this time, obviously I'm still in a very severe deficit all the way up until Friday, so I didn't start putting food in until my last meal on Friday. So I think that last meal, I put in 150 grams of carbohydrates and an extra 20 grams of fat on top of the normal intake for that meal. And then on the Saturday, I essentially mirrored the macronutrient setup as of the last Saturday, but I think I was just a touch even more moderate. So I think it was 35 grams of protein per meal, 100 grams of carbohydrates per meal, and 5 grams of fat in meals 1 to 3, and no fat meals 3 to 5. So 500 grams of carbohydrates in total. Off the top of my head, what's that in protein wise? So 5 times 30, 150. So about 175 grams of protein across the day, and then about 30 grams of fat. So fairly moderate in terms of a carbohydrate load. And again, that was kind of in correlation to me being a bit more conservative, and me wanting to see if I could bring and kind of an extra level of detail to the States, to the Birmingham show, as opposed to the look that I brought to the Manchester show. So where did that leave me in terms of my final look on Sunday morning, the week after the Manchester show, and a couple of hours out from Birmingham? Well, to say the least, a very, very different look from the week prior, and a very different feeling. During the Saturday, whilst I was putting food in, I could tell it was just every single meal was being uptaken very effectively. It wasn't filling the gaps whatsoever, so I didn't feel great on the Saturday. Normally, obviously, once food starts going in, you start to feel a little bit more alive. You can kind of feel your physique coming back to life a little bit after obviously depleting for an extended period of time, but that didn't really occur during the Saturday. And even by the Saturday evening, kind of going to sleep, I was pretty hungry. And I woke up Sunday morning, again, very, very hungry. So I knew it was going to be a low weigh-in. You guys are going to see the progress pictures that I took in the morning on Sunday, which, yes, they're in a different location, different lighting to the week prior, which may or may not kind of impact the ability to be objective in kind of assessing the two looks. But in my opinion, and kind of just from the way I felt in particular, I was extremely flat in the morning. And to give you guys insight into body weight and the comparison to where I woke up on the day of the show for Manchester, it was a 5 pounds difference. So I actually woke up my lightest weight prep yet obviously after eating up on the Saturday. So I woke up at 200 pounds and I was on stage. Well, I woke up on the day of the Manchester show at 205.6 pounds. So considerable drop. And yes, I didn't obviously, an amount of that is going to be the fact that I didn't have as much muscle glycogen in me because I didn't feed up over 3 days. I only fed up over 1 day. But I'm confident that a percentage of that decrease in body weight was body fat. Obviously having pushed things for like five extra days, but that, in my opinion, didn't amount, the extra detail or the extra body fat loss didn't amount to me looking any better. It was very flat, and perhaps if I'd fed up maybe for another 2 days, let's say I had another 2 days before the show, then the combination of the increased muscle glycogen with the increased kind of fat loss that I'd achieved, who knows, that may have been my best look to date. But like I said, I don't think I was able to pull it back, and as you can see from the pictures and the stage pictures, in my opinion, I was very flat on stage, and that definitely translated to the way I felt on stage. I could get a pump, so I got a pump backstage before going up, but then the difference being is that it dropped off very quickly, and the more I posed, it didn't kind of accentuate my physique anymore. So whilst I felt relatively okay on stage, the comparison to how I felt at Manchester was entirely different. It's hard to describe, but it's just, I felt deflated. So essentially just less full. And I know everyone throws around the word of being I was flat, so I'm trying to avoid that word. But it's like when I was posing, it was like I wasn't able to bring any more pop. Nothing else was happening other than me trying to tense muscles as much as possible. So more feedback, and it's feedback that I was actually super happy to have obtained from trying those two different approaches, which is why, in terms of, you're going to see the comparison shots as well, again, conditioning wasn't terrible. Conditioning did come out on stage. It's just, I think conditioning could have looked even better if I was able to present a more full package. But I took 3rd place in what was even a stronger lineup than the week prior, which I was pretty happy about. So it was kind of an extra positive to take away from what was already a positive day for me, because like I've said before, this year for me hasn't been about trophies, hasn't been about placings. Yes, I prep to win, do not get me wrong on that, so don't take me out of context. I always prep to be the best and to be as competitive as I can possibly be, because that's just in my nature. But this year for me has been, like I've said before, and I probably sound like I'm repeating myself, but it's just about learning as much as I can about the process. Learning how to maximize different variables in the process to then obviously bring a better physique to the stage at the end of the contest prep. And to me, what I've taken away from the two approaches, the two very different approaches to these two shows, has been pretty incredible, and I never anticipated to actually learn and to have kind of been as successful with as many of the variables that I have. So I'm very happy from that perspective. And again, really, placing wise, I think I achieved my goal of being the most conditioned on stage. Placing wise, I think it more than likely came down to muscularity again, which you're going to see from the stage comparison pictures. But again, great physiques on stage, great shapes, great balance, and again, more muscle than me. I think potentially I was beaten on condition in my upper body in places, which may or may not have come down to the fact that I wasn't actually able to achieve the level of fullness to really display the condition I was in. But like I said, I'm really not kind of looking at that in any negative light whatsoever, because everyone on that stage I would have been happy to have been beaten by, because I feel like everyone stacked up pretty well, and I'm very damn proud of myself for the physique that I was able to present, and again, very satisfied that I was able to actually step up on stage against a group of guys who, in my opinion, can go as far as they want in this sport over the next couple of years. Obviously, considering the fact that we're all kind of under the age of 23, which is pretty damn exciting. So that then leads me on really to answering the question of what is next for me. I'm getting a crazy amount of messages and people kind of assuming that I'm doing the British finals just because I obviously got the qualification at both shows to obviously compete at the Brits. But it's not on the cards for me this year. I don't think it's conducive to the bigger goal, in my opinion. I know it's easy to take things at face value, and it's easy to assume that I'm doing this for kind of competitive reasons. But the bigger picture and the long-term goal is a lot bigger than getting up on stage at the British finals for the sake of it, which would have meant another 4 or 5 weeks of potentially being, well, it would have been in a deficit, in a diet phase, which is 4 to 5 weeks that I could potentially spend improving my physique to obviously get closer to attaining that goal, or at least moving closer to that longer term goal. So for me, that is the competition season as such. It wasn't a very long season, I know, but that's me done in terms of contests for the year, that's for sure. And my plans now are, of course, to immediately begin putting plans in place and getting the ball rolling on doing everything I possibly can to put myself in the most optimal position to coming back to the stage next year with, I'd like to put it out there, at least 8 to 10 pounds of lean muscle mass. And in my opinion, that starts from the day after the minute I stepped off stage at the Birmingham show. Prep started for next year. Every meal now, every training session, every workout, every rep, everything I do in terms of bodybuilding now has to be conducive to achieving that long-term goal. And I'm very much dedicated to doing what's necessary to now actually achieving that goal, which is why I don't feel it's necessary for me to have to spend any more time competing this year or prepping this year, because if I can't win a qualifier this year, I'm not going to win the British finals. So for me, like I've said, the competitive aspect of competing in the PCA is not the primary kind of long-term goal. The long-term goal is obviously to compete within the IFBB. So if I can't win a qualifier this year, then I'm not essentially going to take away the time that I can spend working towards that longer term goal just for the sake of going to the finals. But that's not to say I won't be there supporting all of the guys who I know who are competing, because more than likely it's going to be a great show and there's going to be some great physiques on stage. So it's definitely going to be an awesome thing to be a part of, but I just won't be competing because I now have a very relentless desire to improve my physique. I know exactly what I need to do. I now have taken a huge amount of knowledge away from this contest prep experience this year, this contest prep diet, Me being my own coach, I've been able to take away a hell of a lot. A hell of a lot of insight, a hell of a lot about my own body, a hell of a lot of information about how to actually structure a contest prep in regards to nutrition, in regards to training, whether it be volume, whether it be intensity, in regards to supplementation, absolutely everything in terms of health, in terms of kind of all of the subjective feedback markers, objective feedback markers in terms of thyroid health, hormones, hormonal profiles, in terms of just everything. And I've tracked all of that data, and I'm now so happy that I have, because I can now go back to the drawing board and put everything that I've learned from this into working on my own strategies, into working with future clients. Obviously, I now plan on spending a lot more time into developing myself as a coach, continuing my education as a personal trainer and as a coach, and then applying that to bodybuilding, because that is ultimately the long-term goal. So my plan is, following this video, it's the next installment or the next series of videos will of course be outlining exactly what I plan to do during my rebound. So I'm now 8 days post-show. The rebound has fully commenced. It's in full swing. So the next step is of course to fill you guys in on my approach in regards to all of the aspects that I will be kind of changing out the back of the last show, out the back of the Birmingham show, and then probably start putting some of my very objective goals out there, because I want to be accountable. I want to stay accountable to myself, to you guys, and to bring you guys along for this journey that I think is going to be, if not more, just as exciting as the contest prep itself. Because this, for me, is, like I said, I'm just viewing this as purely an extension of the prep. So I hope that's been a useful video, guys, and a useful kind of roundup of how the competitions have gone so far. I'm super happy. I'm super motivated in this current time frame, current phase that I'm in, and just genuinely excited to share this with everyone and share this with those people who are obviously interested in what I'm doing. And again, appreciate all of the support. I've been very open with my thankfulness on Instagram, which I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you've probably all seen. So I'm always grateful for all of the support, and it has been pretty overwhelming, I must say, but everyone knows how it is when you're on prep, and everyone kind of wants a piece of the pie and is always willing to share their support, which is absolutely kind of vital, because it does keep that fire burning for sure. But thanks again for watching, guys, and if you like the video, of course, give it a share, give it a thumbs up, give it a share on your Instagram stories, whatever you guys do, and keep your eyes peeled for the next one. Thanks a lot, guys.